Hi, my name is Najoud Moranci. I'm the NASA Orion Mission Planning and Analysis Lead. So what that means is I'm responsible for making sure that the vehicle we build can fly the missions that we get assigned. So whether that means we're going to the moon or onto Mars, we have a vehicle that can bring the crew safely to and from Earth. In particular, that is a lot of the coordination between the engineering and the operations and how it's all going to work. So what's the concept of operations? What are the constraints by which the operators need to control the vehicle? Those types of activities. And so in particular, one example would be all of the power systems. There's lots of stuff on the vehicle, but we don't have to have everything on at the same time. We don't need our parachutes turned on. We don't need a bunch of avionics on. So we go through and make sure that we know what needs to be turned on when, how much power that demand is, and then make sure the solar arrays produce enough power to supply the vehicle for any given event and operation. And then all of that produces heat, so we need to make sure the thermal system's rejecting all the heat that's needed, or things aren't getting too cold. It all has to play together. So all of the subsystems have their own constraints. We have to make sure that the missions can be flown with the amount of propellant we have. So a lot of people work on this. So this is not by me all by myself by any means, but it's running a team to make sure that we consider all of the possibilities and come up with the best and most efficient way to operate the vehicle. And a lot of times what that means is we're doing what are called trade studies or analysis of alternatives. So some notes for you as you work on your mission planning and things like that are very important to first you set the priorities and scope the problem. So you need to make sure you understand what it is you're trying to achieve. If that's just what the power system you're going to use, how you're going to do your mission. Are you going to fly it all on once or not? What is the budget, the schedule you have, what are the resources, and ultimately what is the goal? What is the problem you're trying to solve at any given time? So a lot of times for us, that is how are we going to conduct a particular operation is our goal, whether that's what attitude we're going to fly to produce the right power and reject the right heat. So for Orion, we fly tail to sun most of the time, which means we're putting the main engine on the service module towards the sun, which give the solar arrays full power and the radiators a view to space to stay cool. So that's our first, what's your goal? The second one is what are the options? So select the options. So what are the possible ways you could solve the problem? That could be, if you're talking about power systems, are you going to use solar arrays or are you going to use fuel cells? And if you use fuel cells, they don't last as long. So all of the different ways you can solve a problem, so with lots of options. The thing to think about here is really be creative in this phase of the trade study. You want to make sure that you understand what are current capabilities and what maybe are things you want to develop. Things like ion propulsion exists, but they're not scaled up to big vehicles yet. So all of those things are possible, and here's the time in the phase. The second phase of any trade study is to decide what are all of the possible ways you could solve the problem. The third one is then to think about secondary impacts. So what are the impacts for making a choice? One example, ion engines are really effective ways to travel, but they're very slow. So if you have a crew on board and you're planning a mission to Mars, ion engines may take 2 years to get to Mars, whereas if you use chemical propulsion, it could be as little as 9 months. So ion engines may be a great solution for cargo, but not so good for humans. So there's lots of secondary impacts when you're trying to make a trade. Another one is, I've heard mentioned a lot, is radiation protection. So you could either just protect the crew with bags of water, or you could possibly do a magnetic shield around the vehicle to shield them from radiation. But if you're doing the magnetic one, you need a lot of power to drive some sort of magnetic generation. So now you need a bigger power system. So all of these things feed on each other. So you need to really think about what the secondary impacts are for any trade you're making. So then the fourth thing is to study the trade. So this is where you assign the ratings if you're doing a rating system. What's your 1 through 10, the best solution, or high, medium, low on cost. All of those things, and then you can kind of score things. So you can compare one option to another one and decide how it's going to work out. And so this is where you also need to identify where there's any technical challenges. So if you go with this option, what are the things you need to focus on? So all of this is studying and trading them. And then when you're done with that, you pick the course. So set the course, pick which one you're going to do, and then start working through the details on it. So that's all of the kind of steps that go into mission planning. Things like a moon mission, you may want shorter term vehicles. Not so much has to go at once, but if you're going to Mars, you need lots of stuff already at Mars, or you need to bring a lot with you in one shot. So that means either multiple launches of smaller vehicles or one big launch with all of the stuff you need together. So those are the kind of trades you need to make when you're deciding how to do mission planning. With that, I guess I don't actually have any more. So good luck.